conference room felt smaller than usual. My manager, Derek Holmes, sat at the head of the table with Amanda from HR beside him. Across from me sat 3 of my coworkers, Kelly, Marcus, and Travis. None of them would meet my eyes. Derek cleared his throat and pushed a folder toward me. "Brielle, we need to discuss some concerns that have been raised about your behavior and work performance." My stomach dropped. I looked at Kelly, who I'd trained 2 years ago. She stared at her hands. Marcus picked at his thumbnail. Travis actually smirked before catching himself. That's when I understood. This wasn't a conversation. This was an execution, and they'd already decided the verdict before I walked through the door. The folder sat between us like evidence at a trial I didn't know I was attending. Amanda opened the folder and began reading from what looked like prepared statements. "Multiple team members have reported that you're difficult to work with, that you undermine collaborative efforts, and that you've been emotionally volatile during meetings." I opened my mouth to respond, but Derek raised his hand. "We've documented several instances over the past month," he continued, not meeting my eyes. Security appeared at the door. I hadn't even noticed them arrive. "We're going to need your badge and laptop," Derek said flatly. My hands shook as I unclipped my ID from my belt. 7 years at Consolidated Engineering Solutions, and I was being walked out like a criminal. 10 minutes. That's all it took to erase everything I'd built. No warning. No performance improvement plan. Just a folder of lies and a security escort. I sat in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Through the windshield, I could see the 4th-floor windows where my desk used to be, where my projects still sat, where my reputation had just been shredded by 3 people I'd considered colleagues, maybe even friends. My phone buzzed with a text from Kelly. "I'm sorry it came to this. I really hope you get the help you need." The audacity made my blood boil. Help? I didn't need help. I needed answers. I didn't cry. I didn't call my husband or my mother. I just sat there replaying the past few weeks in my mind, seeing all the signs I'd missed. Or maybe I hadn't missed them at all. Maybe I just hoped I was wrong about what they were planning. My name is Brielle Dawson. I'm 38 years old, and until 20 minutes ago, I was the Senior Compliance Engineer at Consolidated Engineering Solutions. I have a master's degree in civil engineering and 3 professional certifications that took years to earn. I've managed municipal projects worth millions of dollars. City inspectors knew my name. Clients requested me specifically for their most complex projects. I had the strongest technical background on our entire team, and that apparently made me a threat. Because 3 weeks ago, our director announced that 1 senior position was opening up in our division. 3 of us were competing, me, Marcus, and Travis. Only one of us had the credentials and track record. But 2 of them had something I didn't. They were friends with Derek. They had lunch together. They played golf on weekends. They were part of the club. The promotion announcement had changed everything overnight. Suddenly, meetings I'd always attended were scheduled without me. Emails I should have been copied on mysteriously excluded my address. Decisions about my own projects were being made in my absence, then blamed on me when things went wrong. I'd started documenting everything after the 2nd week. Every email, every meeting agenda, every approval I sent, every decision I made. It was an old habit from my compliance work, keeping detailed records of every decision and communication. Paper trails are how engineers protect themselves and their companies. I never thought I'd need those records to defend myself from my own colleagues. I definitely never imagined they'd be planning to eliminate me entirely from the competition. But here I was, fired and escorted out while they divided my projects among themselves. The warning signs had been there if I'd wanted to see them. 2 weeks before my firing, Kelly had stopped eating lunch with me. She'd make excuses about errands or meetings. Marcus began CCing Derek on every single email, even routine updates that never required management oversight. Travis started questioning my technical decisions in front of junior staff, something he'd never done before in 3 years of working together. Then came the meeting where I'd pushed back on a timeline that violated state regulations. I'd explained clearly, with documentation, why we couldn't compress the inspection schedule. Travis had called me inflexible. Marcus said I was being difficult and unwilling to compromise. Kelly remained silent, staring at her laptop. Derek had made a note on his tablet. I remembered thinking that was odd. Now I understood. He was building his case, and they were helping him build it brick by brick. In that HR meeting, Amanda had read their complaints aloud like evidence in a trial. Resistant to feedback. Creates tension in team settings. Emotionally reactive when challenged. Unwilling to collaborate on solutions. Not one of those phrases came from a client. Not one came from an inspector or external stakeholder who actually worked with me. Every single complaint originated from the 3 people sitting across from me, staring at the table like cowards. I'd asked to see specific examples. Derek said they'd compiled incidents over several weeks, but the details were confidential. When I requested copies of the documentation, Amanda said it was part of my personnel file and I'd receive information according to company policy. Translation: they weren't going to show me anything that might let me defend myself. The fix was already in. The decision was already made. This meeting was just theater. They let me return to my desk only to pack my personal items under supervision. A security guard named Tom stood 3 feet away while I emptied my drawers into a cardboard box they'd provided. Photos of my family, a coffee mug my daughter made in 3rd grade, the engineering award I'd won 2 years ago for Project Excellence. My professional certificates hung on the wall. I had to leave those. Kelly appeared beside me as I was taping the box shut. She actually hugged me, right there in front of everyone watching. "I really do hope you find peace," she whispered. "This environment clearly wasn't healthy for you." I pulled back and looked at her. This woman I'd mentored, whose work I'd covered when she was struggling through her divorce. Before I could respond, Travis had already moved into my chair, logging into my computer with credentials IT must have reset that morning. They hadn't even waited for me to leave the building. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was updating my resume at my kitchen table. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. "Brielle Dawson," I answered professionally, unsure who might be calling. "Brielle, this is Howard Chen from the Municipal Planning Department." My stomach tightened immediately. Howard was the senior inspector on my largest active project, a stormwater management system for the North District worth $3 million. "Howard, hi, what can I do for you?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear office noise in the background. "Well, I'm calling because we tried to reach you at your office number, but we were told you no longer work there. Why didn't you tell us you were leaving?" I gripped the phone harder. My voice came out steady despite my racing heart. "I didn't leave, Howard. I was terminated." The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably long. I could almost hear Howard processing this information, probably frowning at his desk. Finally he spoke, his voice careful and quiet. "Brielle, that's not what we were told at all. When we called asking specifically for you yesterday, Derek said you'd left the company due to personal issues. He actually used the word unstable." My vision actually blurred for a second. I had to set down the pen I'd been holding. I heard papers shuffling on his end. "He said you'd been struggling for a while, and that the team had tried to support you, but ultimately the situation became untenable for everyone involved." I couldn't breathe properly. It was one thing to fire me based on fabricated complaints. It was another thing entirely to destroy my professional reputation with the very people who knew the quality of my work firsthand. "Howard, that is absolutely not true. None of it is true." Howard's tone shifted immediately, becoming more businesslike and direct. "Brielle, I've worked with you for 4 years on multiple projects. I've never seen anything that would make me question your stability or professionalism. That's actually why I'm calling, instead of just accepting what Derek told us. The project handoff has been absolutely chaotic. Your replacement doesn't seem to understand the compliance matrix we established together last year." He paused, and I could hear him clicking through something on his computer. "Several items have already been flagged by our review team. Inspection sequences are wrong, required documentation is missing. We're concerned about serious timeline impacts and possible regulatory violations." I could hear the unspoken question hanging in the air. What really happened? "Howard, I need to be careful what I say right now for legal reasons. But I will tell you that I have comprehensive documentation of every decision, approval, and timeline on that project. Everything is properly recorded and backed up in multiple locations. After I hung up with Howard, I opened my personal laptop and navigated to my cloud storage. Before they'd walked me out, while I was packing that cardboard box, I'd made sure all my project files were backed up to my personal accounts. Not the proprietary company information that belonged to Consolidated, but my own documentation. Every email I'd sent, every approval with my digital signature, every meeting note I'd taken, every decision matrix I'd created. 7 years of meticulous record-keeping, all organized by project and date. Compliance engineers live and breathe documentation. We create paper trails because in our field, memory isn't enough, and verbal agreements mean nothing. Regulations demand proof. Timestamps matter. Signatures matter. I'd never imagined I'd need these records to protect my own reputation from people I'd worked beside for years. But there they were. Thousands of files proving I'd done my job correctly. Everything that would show what really happened after they pushed me out. Howard and I met at a coffee shop nowhere near either of our offices 2 days later. He brought his project manager, Patricia Winters, a sharp woman I'd worked with on multiple infrastructure projects. They didn't waste time with small talk or pleasantries. We're having serious problems with the North District project, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the small table. Approval sequences are completely out of order. Required inspections are being scheduled incorrectly. When we raised concerns with your replacement, we were told these were your original plans and you'd left things disorganized. I reviewed the documents she'd brought. They were completely wrong. Whoever had taken over had either fundamentally misunderstood the compliance requirements or simply didn't care about following proper procedures. This would fail state inspection immediately, I said, pointing to 3 critical errors on the first page alone. These aren't my plans at all. This isn't even close to what we filed. Howard nodded slowly. That's exactly what we thought, which brings us to why we're really here. Howard leaned forward, lowering his voice even though the coffee shop was nearly empty. Our partner firm, Sterling Municipal Solutions, is expanding their compliance division rapidly. They're taking on major infrastructure projects across 3 counties. They asked us to recommend someone who understands municipal compliance inside and out and has established relationships with city agencies. Patricia added, We gave them your name immediately. We told them you were the best compliance engineer we'd ever worked with. My heart started beating faster. They want to meet with you, Howard continued. The position is bigger than what you had at Consolidated. Senior director level. They're looking for someone to build out their entire compliance department. I met with Sterling's director of engineering, Malcolm Torres, the following week. The offices were modern, well-funded, clearly a company on the rise. The position was significantly bigger than my old role, with a better title and 20% more salary. Malcolm was direct and impressive. We've heard excellent things about your work from multiple sources. Howard and Patricia spoke very highly of you, and we've done our research. I accepted Sterling's offer that same afternoon. But I did something calculated and deliberate next. I didn't update LinkedIn. I didn't post about my new job on any social media. I didn't tell anyone outside my immediate family where I was going or what I'd be doing. I let Consolidated Engineering Solutions believe I was still unemployed, still struggling, still dealing with whatever personal issues Derek had invented to explain my absence to clients. Because silence makes people nervous. Silence makes them wonder what you're planning. Silence makes them imagine the worst possible scenarios. And I wanted Derek and my former coworkers to feel very nervous about what I might do next, what I might say, who I might talk to. I wanted them to wake up at night, wondering if I was angry enough to take legal action. I wanted them to second-guess every decision they'd made, because they deserved to feel exactly as uncertain and anxious as they'd made me feel in that conference room. Within 2 weeks of my departure, cracks started showing at Consolidated. I heard about it through industry contacts who didn't know I'd been fired and were just sharing professional gossip. Projects were missing key documentation. The compliance tracking system I'd personally maintained had gaps that were causing delays. Decisions I used to catch before they became problems were now slipping through and creating issues with inspectors. Marcus had taken over most of my projects, but he didn't have my certifications. He couldn't legally sign off on certain approvals. Travis was handling client communications, but he didn't understand the technical requirements well enough to answer detailed questions. And Kelly, who'd helped orchestrate my removal, was drowning in work she didn't know how to complete. The best part? Several of those projects still had my name on the original filings as engineer of record. When mistakes surfaced, external agencies asked for me specifically, and I wasn't there to fix anything or explain their errors. The email arrived exactly 4 weeks after my termination. It was from the State Engineering Compliance Office, CC'd to Consolidated's legal department and executive leadership. Subject line: Request for clarification, North District Stormwater Project. They'd identified multiple discrepancies between the approved plans I'd submitted and the current work orders being executed in the field. They were requesting the engineer of record to provide documentation explaining the changes and confirming they met state regulations. The engineer of record was me, except I no longer worked there and had no access to their systems. I imagined the panic in Derek's office when that email arrived. Legal would have immediate questions, executives would demand answers, and someone would have to explain why the engineer who'd managed this multi-million-dollar project flawlessly for 2 years was suddenly gone. That email triggered something I'd been quietly waiting for: an internal review. Because when legal gets involved, everything gets examined carefully, including recent terminations, including the circumstances around my departure, including who had made what decisions and why. HR began reviewing my personnel file as part of the legal department's investigation. That's when inconsistencies started emerging that nobody had bothered to check before firing me. My annual performance reviews for the past 3 years were all rated exceeds expectations or higher. My client feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with multiple letters of commendation. Multiple projects had been completed ahead of schedule and under budget. I'd received 2 company awards for excellence. None of that matched the narrative of someone who was difficult, uncooperative, or emotionally unstable. Someone in HR, probably someone junior who wasn't involved in my termination, asked the question that Derek and Amanda had hoped no one would ask. Where did these behavior complaints actually originate? The answer was obvious once anyone looked at the timeline. They'd all come from 3 people. During the exact same 3-week period, right after the promotion was announced, and not one of them had filed a formal complaint before then. The pattern was too clean, too coordinated, too convenient to be organic or genuine. My phone rang late on a Tuesday evening. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a spam call. Hello? It's Natasha. I recognized the voice immediately. Natasha Kim was a junior engineer who joined the team 8 months ago. I'd helped her learn the compliance software and had spent hours mentoring her. Natasha, hi, what's going on? Her voice was shaking badly. I need to tell you something. I can't keep quiet anymore. I can't sleep. She took a deep breath that I could hear clearly. They told us what to say about you. Derek called a meeting with just Kelly, Marcus, and Travis. This was like 3 weeks before you were fired. He told them the promotion was probably going to you unless they could document performance issues. He coached them on exactly what to say, what words to use. My grip on the phone tightened. How do you know this? Kelly told me everything. She felt guilty afterward. She was drinking and just broke down. She recorded the conversation with Derek on her phone. She wanted insurance in case this backfired on her. Natasha sent me the audio file within minutes. I listened to it 3 times, my anger building with each replay. The recording was absolutely damning. Derek's voice came through clearly. We need documented concerns about Brielle's collaboration and attitude, not about her technical work. That's too solid to challenge. Focus on soft skills, teamwork, flexibility, emotional regulation. Those are subjective enough that she can't easily disprove them. Marcus asked, what if she challenges it or asks for specifics? Derek responded without hesitation, she won't have the chance. We move fast. HR meeting? Immediate termination, escort her out same day. By the time she processes what happened, it's over and she's gone. Travis said, "What about her projects? She's managing like 6 major contracts. We'll redistribute them." "Marcus, you'll take the municipal contracts. You'll figure it out as you go." That recording proved everything. This wasn't about my performance or behavior. This was about eliminating competition for a promotion. This was conspiracy. But there was another problem that emerged the same week. One that made everything even worse for them. The IT department discovered unauthorized access during a routine security audit. Someone had been logging into my account using my credentials after I was terminated. 16 times over 3 weeks. They'd modified project files, they'd sent emails to clients, they'd approved change orders, all of it appearing to come from me, with my digital signature, after I no longer worked there. When IT flagged this to legal, everything exploded, because those actions created massive liability. If something went wrong with those projects, if someone got hurt or regulations were violated, Consolidated could be sued. And the modifications made after my termination meant they couldn't even claim I was the responsible party. Legal contacted me directly. A lawyer named Harrison Webb called my cell phone. "Miss Dawson, I'm calling from Consolidated's legal department regarding some irregularities we've discovered. Did you authorize anyone to access your account or use your credentials after your departure?" I answered honestly and carefully, "Absolutely not. I surrendered all credentials the day I was terminated. I've had no access to company systems since then whatsoever." The lawyer's tone shifted noticeably. "We're investigating who made these modifications and why. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement?" Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Derek's number appeared on my phone screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering, wanting him to wonder if I'd pick up at all. "This is Brielle." His voice had none of its usual confidence or authority. He sounded nervous, almost pleading. "Brielle, it's Derek Holmes. I'm calling to see if you might be available to help us with some project transitions. We're experiencing some challenges with the municipal contracts and thought you might be willing to consult on a temporary basis." I let the silence hang for a long moment. "You fired me, Derek. You told clients I was unstable. You had me escorted out by security after 10 minutes in a conference room where 3 of my colleagues read scripted complaints about my behavior. Complaints you coached them to make, and now you want my help?" He tried to recover, his voice getting defensive. "I understand you're upset, but we're willing to discuss compensation for your time. Generous compensation." I kept my voice level and cold. "You told Howard Chen I left due to personal issues. You destroyed my professional reputation, and now your problems are somehow my responsibility?" I hung up without waiting for his response. The dominoes fell faster after that call. Howard's office formally paused their contracts with Consolidated pending resolution of the compliance issues. The state expanded their audit to include 3 other projects I'd managed. HR interviewed every team member separately about my termination, and their stories started contradicting each other badly. Kelly claimed she'd raised concerns organically over time. Marcus said Derek had asked for documentation of problems. Travis insisted everything was based on his own observations. None of their timelines matched. None of their specific examples aligned. Text messages between them started surfacing during the investigation. Kelly had written to Marcus 2 days after my firing. "Do you think we went too far with this?" Marcus responded, "Too late now, just stick to the story Derek told us." Travis had texted both of them. "Stop talking about this over text. Delete everything." They'd stopped communicating after that, probably realizing their messages could be discovered. But the damage was done. The conspiracy was documented in their own words. And legal had everything they needed to understand exactly what had happened. The executive team reviewed everything over a 3-day period. The recording from Natasha, the inconsistent HR interviews, the unauthorized system access, the audit findings, my spotless performance history, and the client complaints about project mismanagement. The conclusion was obvious to anyone looking at the evidence objectively. We terminated the wrong person, the VP of Operations reportedly said in a closed-door meeting. 2 weeks later, Kelly and Marcus were fired for falsifying personnel complaints and conspiracy to commit fraud. Travis resigned before he could be formally questioned, probably hoping to avoid having a termination on his record. Derek was reassigned to a non-supervisory role in a different division, effectively ending his management career. Amanda from HR was placed on administrative leave pending investigation of her handling of my termination. And I received a formal letter of apology from Consolidated's CEO, copied to the executive team, legal department, and board of directors. It acknowledged that my termination was unjustified and based on false information. It was the most expensive apology they'd ever written, and they knew it. When Sterling Municipal Solutions announced my hiring as their new senior compliance director, the industry took immediate notice. The position was more prestigious than the promotion I'd been competing for at Consolidated. My salary was higher, my authority was broader, my team would be larger. And the first thing that happened was entirely predictable. 3 of Consolidated's largest municipal clients requested contract transfers to work with me at Sterling. Howard's office was first. Patricia's department followed. Then the county engineering division made the switch. I didn't solicit them. I didn't badmouth my former employer. I simply did what I'd always done. Excellent work with meticulous documentation and clear communication. The clients followed the engineer they trusted, not the company that had fired her. Marcus watched from LinkedIn as the projects he'd taken from me walked out the door. Derek saw his division's revenue drop by 30% in 2 months. The promotion they'd schemed to win became meaningless when there was nothing left to manage. Kelly sent me one final email from her personal address. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know we were scared. Scared you'd get the promotion. Scared you'd outgrow us. Scared you'd leave us behind. I closed my laptop without responding. There was nothing to say. They'd made their choice. I was walking into the future they'd tried to steal.